first guest is a global superstar, one of the best-selling music artists of all time. I love him very, very, very much. Please welcome the incredibly talented Bruno Mars.
Bruno, you are an incredible human being. You're a musician for the ages. I don't know music without Bruno.
At the height of his fame, when the world was still dancing to the beat of Uptown Funk and singing along to Just the Way You Are, Bruno Mars suddenly went quiet. No interviews, no new music, no shows. Fans who once saw him as unstoppable began to wonder, what happened to Bruno Mars? Was he simply taking a break, or was there something deeper behind the silence? The internet buzzed with rumors, everything from burnout to secret health issues, and even whispers of a massive gambling debt. But Bruno said nothing. His silence was louder than any headline. Now, at the age of 38, after years of speculation, he's finally ready to open up. But to understand why one of the most talented performers of our time chose to step back from the spotlight, we have to go back to the beginning. Because Bruno's story isn't just about fame and music, it's about struggle, sacrifice, heartbreak, and survival. It's the story of a little boy from Hawaii who turned pain into power and rhythm into resilience. So let's rewind the clock and uncover the real journey of Bruno Mars. The journey that made him disappear and the journey that might bring him back. Bruno Mars was born as Peter Gene Hernandez on October 8, 1985, in the vibrant city of Honolulu, Hawaii. From the very beginning, music was in his blood. His father, Peter Hernandez, was a percussionist from Brooklyn with Puerto Rican and Jewish roots. His mother, Bernadette San Pedro Bayo, was a hula dancer and singer of Filipino and Spanish descent. Together, they filled their home with rhythm, melody, and passion. Bruno was one of 6 siblings, growing up in a house where music wasn't just background noise, it was the heartbeat of everyday life. At just 2 years old, his father gave him the nickname Bruno, inspired by a chubby wrestler named Bruno Sammartino, thinking the name suited his bold personality. By the time he was 4, Bruno was already performing 5 nights a week with the family band, the Love Notes. He imitated Elvis Presley with such flair that he became a local sensation. But behind the smiles and applause was a childhood filled with challenges. When his parents separated, Bruno's world was turned upside down. The family faced extreme financial hardship, sometimes sleeping in their car or even on rooftops. Still, Bruno clung to music. It wasn't just a passion, it was his escape. These early years, filled with cultural richness and economic struggle, planted the seeds of a unique artist. He wasn't just learning to sing and dance. He was learning how to survive, how to feel, and how to pour every emotion into his performance. This was the foundation of Bruno Mars. As Bruno grew older, his dream only got bigger. Performing in Honolulu gave him confidence, but he knew he had to leave the island to truly make it in the music world. After graduating from President Theodore Roosevelt High School, Bruno made a bold decision. At just 17, he packed his bags and moved to Los Angeles, a city full of lights, music, and ruthless competition. It was a leap of faith, and nothing could prepare him for what came next. Instead of instant fame, Bruno was met with closed doors and disappointment. The city was harsh. He lived on Mansfield Avenue, surrounded by poverty, and struggled to find stability. But instead of giving up, he adjusted. He took on the name Bruno Mars, wanting a stage name that sounded out of this world. He added Mars, not just for flair, but to avoid being labeled solely as a Latin artist. He didn't want to be boxed in. Despite facing rejection after rejection, he stayed. He played gigs, wrote songs, and waited for a break that never seemed to come. A deal with Motown Records came and went without results. Still, Bruno refused to go home. He was determined to prove himself. In a city where thousands come to chase dreams and fail, Bruno held on, not just because he believed in his talent, but because he had no other option. For him, music wasn't a choice. It was survival, and every sleepless night in LA was just another beat in the rhythm of his rise. The struggle behind the sound, rejection, grit, and songwriting. Bruno Mars's journey in Los Angeles wasn't paved with gold. It was lined with rejection, frustration, and the constant urge to give up. After being dropped by Motown, he found himself at a crossroads. But quitting wasn't in his nature. Instead, he turned his focus to songwriting, teaming up with like-minded talents who believed in music as deeply as he did. One of those people was Philip Lawrence, a fellow musician and writer.
And it was just so gratifying, you know.
So in a way, I complete you.
Well,
That's the fun part about music.
Their collaboration began humbly, without money or contracts, just a shared passion and a dream. Bruno also connected with Brody Brown and Jeff Basker, forming a creative circle that worked tirelessly behind the scenes. They studied hits, broke down what made songs work, and began crafting their own. Steve Lindsay, a veteran producer, took Bruno under his wing and taught him the true mechanics of hitmaking, how to balance emotion, timing, and simplicity. Those years were grueling. They wrote hundreds of songs, many of which were ignored or rejected by major labels. At times, the rejections hit hard, especially when Bruno poured his heart into a track, only to be told it wasn't good enough. But each no made him sharper. He learned the business, polished his voice, and shaped his signature sound, a mix of funk, pop, R&B, and soul. These tough years in the background weren't wasted. They were the crucible that forged him. Bruno wasn't just becoming a singer, he was becoming a creator, a storyteller, and a quiet force waiting for the world to catch on. After years of writing, rehearsing, and facing endless rejection, Bruno Mars finally found the moment he had been working toward. It didn't come with flashing lights or a solo album, but through collaboration. His breakthrough began behind the scenes, when he co-wrote Flo Rida's hit single, Right Round, in 2009. The song climbed the charts and gave Bruno his first taste of success. But more importantly, it opened doors. Suddenly, people started asking, who's this Bruno Mars guy? His songwriting skills led to another huge moment, co-writing and featuring on B.O.B's smash hit, Nothing on You. That track didn't just perform well, it exploded, hitting #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and turning Bruno into a household name. He followed it up with Billionaire, alongside Travie McCoy, which further cemented his sound and his voice in the minds of millions. What stood out was his ability to blend genres, pop, soul, reggae, and R&B, into something fresh yet familiar. People connected with his lyrics, his melodies, and most of all, his energy. Bruno was no longer a background player, he had cracked the code. He understood how to make music that moved people and sold records.
Nando's.
Is that where they take you?
Oh my goodness.
Is that your choice?
That's my choice.
Is it really? Are you a big fan of the Nando's?
But even with these early successes, he didn't rush. He stayed patient, calculating his next move. These collaborations weren't just stepping stones, they were statements. He was showing the world that he wasn't just another singer with a good voice. He was an artist, a writer, and a visionary ready to shape the sound of a generation. From shadows to spotlight, the solo artist emerges. By 2010, Bruno Mars had already written and featured on major hits, but now it was time to step out from the shadows and into the spotlight. That year, he released his debut EP titled It's Better If You Don't Understand. It was a modest introduction, not a chart-topping release, but it marked the beginning of Bruno's solo identity. The EP included tracks like The Other Side, featuring CeeLo Green and B.O.B., and gave listeners a taste of the style Bruno was about to perfect. He followed it with his debut studio album, Doo-Wops and Hooligans, later that same year, and that changed everything. The album included songs like Just the Way You Are, Grenade, and The Lazy Song, all of which skyrocketed to the top of global charts. Bruno's sound was emotional but catchy, vintage yet modern. His voice was smooth, his lyrics heartfelt, and his performances electric. He wasn't just making music, he was making moments that stuck with people. The album was a commercial and critical success, earning him Grammy nominations and a devoted fan base. He had officially arrived. But behind the fame was still the same artist who had once performed for $5 or slept in a car. He hadn't forgotten the grind. He used that hunger to fuel every performance, every lyric, every note. Bruno Mars was no longer a songwriter lending his voice to others. He was now a full-fledged star, blazing his own trail and shining on his own terms. Bruno Mars wasn't content with just being a chart topper. He wanted to create a sound that was unmistakably his, timeless, energetic, and rich with emotion. As his fame grew, so did his standards. Every song, every lyric, every beat had to be just right. He wasn't chasing trends, he was creating music that could live forever. Bruno's second studio album, Unorthodox Jukebox, released in 2012, was proof of that. With hits like Locked Out of Heaven, When I Was Your Man, and Treasure, he pushed boundaries while paying homage to classic sounds of funk, reggae, and soul. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and quickly reached number 1 in multiple countries. Critics praised it, fans loved it, and the music industry took notice. This wasn't just another pop star. This was a performer with range, depth, and vision. His attention to detail extended to live shows too. Bruno became known for electrifying performances that blended vocals, choreography, and showmanship. He didn't just sing, he performed, and he demanded the same level of excellence from his band, the Hooligans. Every stage he stepped on became his playground. Bruno studied legends like James Brown, Prince, and Elvis. Not to imitate them, but to learn what made them unforgettable. He didn't want to be the next anyone. He wanted to be the first and only Bruno Mars. That perfectionism wasn't about ego, it was about legacy. Fame and fortune, Bruno's meteoric rise. By the mid-2000s teens, Bruno Mars was no longer just a rising star, he was a global phenomenon. His albums sold millions, his concerts were packed, and his name became synonymous with quality music and high-energy performances. The numbers spoke for themselves. In 2013, Billboard estimated his earnings at over $18 million, placing him among the highest-paid musicians of the year. But that was just the beginning. By 2014, Forbes reported he had earned $60 million in just 12 months. And in 2018, he reached the peak, earning a jaw-dropping $100 million and becoming America's highest-paid musician. Bruno wasn't just making hits, he was building an empire. Every performance, whether on tour or at the Super Bowl halftime show, was a masterclass in entertainment. Fans across the world saw him not just as a singer, but as a true artist, someone who lived and breathed music. Despite his soaring success, Bruno didn't let the fame distract him. He remained deeply involved in the creative process, writing, producing, and directing. He collaborated with legends and newcomers alike, always with one goal: to make music that mattered. But with great success came even greater pressure. The spotlight was intense, and the expectations were massive. Still, Bruno handled it all with charm, humility, and unmatched dedication. He wasn't just performing for applause, he was performing for the love of the craft. His meteoric rise wasn't just about talent. It was about discipline, focus, and the belief that music could change everything. And for him, it truly had. As Bruno Mars's fame grew, so did the challenges that came with it. Success in the music industry isn't always smooth, and Bruno soon found himself entangled in the darker side of stardom: legal disputes, copyright claims, and industry criticism. One of the most high-profile controversies involved the smash hit Uptown Funk, a track that dominated charts and airwaves globally. While fans danced to its infectious beat, multiple artists and groups came forward claiming the song borrowed too heavily from their original work. The Gap Band, for instance, alleged that Uptown Funk copied elements of their track Oops Upside Your Head. They were eventually credited as co-writers and awarded a share of the royalties. But that wasn't the end. More lawsuits followed, including claims from the funk band Collage and others who accused the song of sounding too similar to their work. These legal battles stirred debates not just about originality, but also about cultural appropriation. Some critics argued that Bruno, a non-black artist, was profiting from black musical styles without proper acknowledgement. These accusations added emotional weight to an already intense situation. Bruno, known for his respectful nods to the genres that shaped him, never intended disrespect. But the controversies forced him into a new space, one where his success came with criticism, not just celebration. It was a sobering reminder that fame carries responsibility. And for Bruno, this period was a test of resilience. He wasn't just protecting his music, he was protecting his name, his legacy, and everything he had worked so hard to build. The gamble, rumors, debts, and the hidden struggles. In early 2021, as Bruno Mars continued to shine on stage and in the studio, rumors began to swirl that painted a very different picture behind the scenes. Whispers of a massive gambling debt, allegedly $50 million, started to circulate, with reports claiming he owed the money to MGM Resorts International.
Reportedly racked up $50 million in gambling debt. A source alleged that Mars takes home $90 million from his current deal with MGM and a recently launched cocktail lounge called the Pinky Ring at Vegas-based MGM property, the Bellagio.
According to some sources, much of his income from his highly successful Las Vegas residences was being used to pay back the supposed debt. These stories shocked fans. How could a man earning nearly $90 million a year from performances possibly be in financial trouble? The idea seemed hard to believe. Bruno Mars, the perfectionist, the professional, the powerhouse, now rumored to be in over his head. MGM quickly denied the allegations, calling them completely false and reaffirming their strong, positive relationship with the star. Still, the rumors refused to die. Bruno himself stayed silent. That silence only deepened the mystery. Years earlier, during a light-hearted moment on Carpool Karaoke, Bruno had joked about gambling to pay bills. But suddenly, the joke didn't feel so light. Whether the rumors were true or not, they sparked a deeper conversation about the pressures of fame. Behind the lights and applause, even the most successful artists face private struggles. Bruno had always worn a smile, but perhaps even he wasn't immune to the weight of expectations, the temptations of wealth, and the isolation that comes with life at the top. This chapter of his life reminded fans that stardom, no matter how bright, can cast very long shadows. Just when the world thought Bruno Mars might be fading into the background, he returned, but not alone. In 2021, he re-emerged alongside Anderson .Paak, a soulful, funky, and energetic artist in his own right. Together, they formed Silk Sonic, a duo that would take the music world by storm. Their debut album, An Evening with Silk Sonic, was a masterclass in smooth R&B, vintage soul, and infectious rhythm. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a reinvention. Bruno wasn't chasing pop charts this time. He was diving deep into classic sounds, paying tribute to the music of the 70s while making it feel fresh and exciting. The duo's first single, Leave the Door Open, was a slow jam dripping with emotion and precision. It topped the charts, won awards, and reminded everyone of Bruno's undeniable talent. But there was something different about this era. Bruno seemed more relaxed, more in control. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply enjoying the music, the artistry, and the collaboration. In a surprising move, Silk Sonic later withdrew their album from Grammy consideration. They had been praised and predicted to sweep the awards, but Bruno and Anderson stepped back, saying they wanted to give other artists a chance. That decision stunned the industry, but also earned deep respect. It wasn't about trophies anymore. Bruno was making music for the love of it. In many ways, Silk Sonic wasn't just a project. It was a statement, a reminder that true artistry doesn't always need validation. Sometimes the joy of creating is reward enough. The public and the private, navigating fame in silence. Fame has always been loud, but Bruno Mars learned the power of silence. While many celebrities document every moment of their lives on social media, Bruno took a different path. He became known not only for his music, but for how little he shared about his personal life. No viral rants, no endless stories, no public breakdowns, just music. This deliberate choice made him an enigma, a rare trait in today's fame-obsessed world. But that silence wasn't without purpose. Bruno had seen what the spotlight could do, the scrutiny, the rumors, the constant pressure to perform, not just on stage, but in life. Instead of feeding the public's curiosity, he preserved his peace. Fans noticed that even during some of his career's highest peaks, Bruno remained grounded, rarely giving interviews or chasing media attention. This privacy gave him control, not just over his image, but over his mental and emotional well-being. It allowed him space to create without noise, to evolve without distraction. Still, it also sparked speculation. The silence sometimes led to misunderstandings or exaggerated rumors. But Bruno never explained. He never needed to. For him, music was always the message. Every lyric, every performance, every beat told his story far louder than words ever could. In a world where oversharing is the norm, Bruno's quiet strength stood out. He showed that sometimes the most powerful thing an artist can do is step back, reflect, and speak only through what they do best, through their art. Bruno Mars is more than just a singer. He's a brand, a businessman, and a cultural icon. While his music continues to win hearts across the globe, his ventures outside the studio have also played a major role in shaping his legacy. Bruno's sharp sense of style, bold suits, flashy jewelry, and retro sunglasses became part of his identity. He wasn't just dressing up for the stage, he was building a recognizable image that paid tribute to funk legends and vintage soul while keeping things fresh and modern. His look became as iconic as his sound, influencing fashion and setting trends. Behind the scenes, Bruno was making smart business moves. He teamed up with high-end brands, launched successful tours, and helped build the image of Silk Sonic with meticulous care. He also ensured that his band, the Hooligans, wasn't just background support. They were part of the show, a musical family that traveled and grew with him. His attention to detail in both sound and presentation revealed the mind of a true professional. What made Bruno different was his understanding of longevity. He didn't rush releases or chase the next viral hit. Instead, he focused on creating quality that would last. Songs and performances that could stand the test of time. Every decision, from collaborations to live appearances, seemed intentional. In doing so, Bruno wasn't just building a career, he was building a legacy. One that didn't depend on constant visibility, but on lasting impact. And that's what made him not just famous, but unforgettable. Bruno Mars's story is more than just a tale of fame and fortune. It's a lesson in resilience. From his humble beginnings in Honolulu to the glittering stages of Las Vegas, his path was anything but smooth. He faced rejection, financial hardship, personal loss, legal battles, and public scrutiny. Yet, through it all, he never gave up. He never let failure define him. Instead, he used it as fuel. When labels turned him away, he sharpened his songwriting. When he was dropped from his first deal, he built his skills behind the scenes. When controversy struck, he stayed focused on his art. His ability to adapt, evolve, and keep going is what truly sets him apart. Bruno's journey reminds us that talent alone isn't enough. It takes discipline, patience, and a relentless belief in yourself, even when no one else believes in you. His silence in the face of gossip wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Rather than chase headlines, he protected his peace and poured his truth into his music. He teaches us that real success isn't about avoiding obstacles, it's about facing them with grace and pushing forward anyway. He also shows us that you don't need to fit into industry molds to shine. Bruno didn't let his heritage, his past, or others' expectations limit him. He created his own lane. And perhaps the most powerful lesson of all, you can walk away from the spotlight, take your time, and still return stronger. Because resilience, like rhythm, never truly leaves. It just waits for the right beat to rise again. As Bruno Mars stands at 38, with decades of experience, countless awards, and a legacy already cemented, the question on everyone's mind is, what's next? After all the highs and lows, after the rumors and reinventions, Bruno still holds one thing that matters most: the love of music. He may not post daily updates or chase every trend, but his silence often speaks louder than noise. It signals reflection, growth, and preparation for what's to come. And when he does return, whether with a new album, a surprise collaboration, or an unexpected move, it's never ordinary. It's always purposeful, always impactful. Bruno has already achieved what many artists only dream of: global success, creative freedom, and the ability to disappear and reappear on his own terms. That's power. But more than that, it's respect. Earned not just through talent, but through consistency, humility, and passion. Whether he continues down the soulful path of Silk Sonic, explores new genres, or even steps behind the scenes to mentor others, one thing is certain: Bruno Mars is far from done. His story is a reminder that greatness doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes it walks quietly, works patiently, and then stuns the world when the time is right. As fans, we may not always know what Bruno is planning. But we do know one thing: when the music plays again, when the lights go up, and when that first note hits, we'll be there. Because Bruno Mars doesn't just follow the beat, he creates it. And that beat will go on. Bruno Mars's journey has never followed a straight path. From his early days performing in Hawaii to becoming a global sensation, his story has been a mix of highs and lows, triumphs and trials. At 38, he is no longer just the young dreamer. He is the man who faced rejection, overcame controversy, and built a legacy with heart, hustle, and humility. The rumors, whether about his silence, legal challenges, or personal struggles, never defined him. He chose not to answer with words, but with music. He let the world speculate while he created, refined, and evolved in his own time. In an age where everyone wants to be seen, Bruno chose privacy. Where others rushed, he took his time. And in a world that demands noise, he mastered the art of quiet excellence. His story reminds us that greatness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's patient. Sometimes it's silent, but it always shows up when it matters most. So as Bruno continues his journey, writing, performing, or simply stepping back, we're left with one powerful truth. If he can weather the storm, stay true to his rhythm, and still move millions, then maybe we can too. The beat never really stops. It just waits for those brave enough to keep dancing. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories that go beyond the spotlight.